go. So today we are covering Google Calendar. We're going to look at how it works for both you as the teacher, just to support you with organising events if you do want to move to the Google Calendar world. And then we're also going to look at how it works alongside Google Classroom as a bit of a planner for our students too. So the first thing I'm going to do, and you're welcome to follow along with me in this one today, is I'm going to access Google Calendar. So I've got a few people joining in, so just make sure that, just to recap as well, make sure that you have all joined the classrooms. Make sure you're all muted as well, please.
Last week I went in my cabin club and one of my friends lost.
Right, so just make sure you mute as soon as you come in, please, because we don't want you to end up in the recording by mistake. So make sure you're a member of the Google Classrooms. Just to recap, for East Lothian, you'll need to join the one with the East Lothian code, and those of you in Mid Lothian, please join with the Mid Lothian code. This is just because Google Classrooms can only be accessed by you in your own organisation. You cannot join ones from others. So I am just going to come out of this. I'm going to access my Google Calendar. And to access Google Calendar, we can go from any of the Google tools and click on those 9 tiles. And you'll see them when you're on your Google Classroom, that they are up in the top corner as well. Likewise, when we're on google.com, which is my usual go-to to show you, you will also see the tiles next to either your profile picture or next to your first initial. If I just zoom in ever so slightly there, if I click on this, just in case you've not been in previous sessions, this entire menu here can be customized. So you can click and drag things to reorder them just based on what you use the most. So if there is something in this menu that you never use, you may never use Google Chat, for example. Every time I click to admit someone in the room, this menu vanishes. So I do apologize. We've got a few more people joining in here. So if there is anything you never access, just drag it out of the way. So certainly those of you in Mid Lothian, you won't use Gmail. You can click and drag that and move it into this bottom bit, and then it will go to this additional part of the menu. If there is something further down that you use regularly, for example, Google Forms, click and drag that into the most used at the top. I tend to have Classroom and Drive first. I just remind everybody to mute your microphones. I'm going to be a grumpy one today, I think, if we're not muted. Let me just make sure that everyone has muted. Yeah. So from here, I can click on Calendar, and this will launch Google Calendar. Now, down the left-hand side, you may or may not have as many calendars as I have. So I have got quite a number, and that's just because of all the Google Classrooms I am both a teacher of and a student in. So down the side, I have my list. Automatically, if you have never used Calendar, every single one of these will be ticked. So you will be able to view every single one. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time clicking through. You'll see, even though it's my birthday, it's not very far away. So it knows, and it can display multiple calendars at once, all in one place. So you can toggle them on or off using the tick boxes down the side. Or if you only want to view one, if we click on the 3 dots, I just hover over this one, you'll see the 3 dots appear next to the calendar name. And then you can select display this only. That will remove all of the other ones and just makes it a bit cleaner. I tend to either have my personal calendar displayed only, or the calendar that I am adding events to. So if I wanted to add events to my own calendar, I would display this only. And then that means anything that I add to this, so if I added something for next Thursday, that goes straight into that calendar. Or, for example, the Techie Tea Party Classroom, if I display this one only, any of the events I add will be added into this calendar directly. So you'll see this calendar is my busiest one because this is where I have shared this calendar so that more people can access this and can join some of our Hangouts and our meets that we have every day. So that's how to tidy that up. You're welcome to add more calendars. So the calendars that you can add one. So there are schools who use this for, and I know we're not in school and we don't have the stress of booking out devices, but when you do come to being back in school, when things are eventually a bit more normal, and that is one of our issues, because I'm assuming by the time you all go back into school, you're going to be using devices all the time because you absolutely love G Suite now with all these tea parties you're joining every single day. I've seen Malcolm having a little chuckle there. So yeah, certainly these devices are going to be in high demand. So having a calendar for when you're booking your Chromebooks for your classes is really useful. And all you would do, and I'll show you how to add a calendar for this. At the bottom, you'll see these are all the classrooms where I am a student, I think. So many calendars on here. I don't really know what half of them are for, to be honest. So I can go onto this other calendars down the bottom. You may not have as far to scroll. And then you can click on the add other calendars. And this is where you could create a calendar. So I'm going to create one that's called staff meetings, just to help us with creating some online staff meetings at the moment, but it can also be useful for your whole school calendar as well. So I'm going to select create new calendar to create a new one. Then this will load the new calendar screen. So if I just zoom out slightly so it looks a bit more like what you'll see when you load this up. A little thing to note here is as soon as we've put in all the information and create the calendar, this whole page doesn't close. It stays there and makes it look like it's not worked. So don't worry, it has worked. We just need to go back into our calendar overview to see that calendar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the calendar a name. I'm going to call this one staff meetings. And then you could add a description. So it could be school names, staff meetings, and that's all you would need. So you can create calendar. Okay, no more questions coming in. If I hide this at the bottom, you'll see it says calendar creation in progress in this black pop-up box that has appeared. It does take a little second to do. Now you'll see that black box that says staff meeting successfully created. But this screen at the top has gone back and kind of refreshed. If I just come out of the settings, so that's this top left arrow that's pointing to the left. And if I scroll down, I've now got this staff meetings calendar. Now I do have two of these, so I'll delete the one that I had previously. So I've got staff meetings calendar. If you do want to delete any calendar, so if I hover over it, you'll see this X has appeared. Let me just zoom in. The X has appeared. I can basically remove this calendar from the list and that can tidy up. So if you do have some that you don't want to have on there, just remove them. And this is your calendar. It's your way of organizing life. Just remove it and you'll be absolutely fine. I would say keep the ones for your own classrooms. However, as it's useful if a student says, I don't know when this is due, you can say to them that it will appear in the calendar and all of the dates are in there. So if you have a task that you've set in your classroom with a due date, it will appear in that classroom's calendar. So students don't always have to go to the classroom to see what's due. They can look at the calendar, plan out how they're going to do the work. Or certainly when it comes to having more of an exam timetable in future, however that will look and when that will happen, you as a teacher could support a revision timetable in their Google calendars as well, so that the students can go in, see when their exams are, see if you've got any drop-in times for any revision sessions, and have that all in one place. So that's another useful way of using the calendar. More in primary, you will likely use it as a way of students getting to grips with using a calendar in primary 7 as a transition piece, so that students are more familiar with accessing their calendar and knowing when tasks are due, or as a staff, so with your colleagues as well. So I've got my staff meetings calendar. I'm now going to display this one only, so you'll note it's all blank because this is a brand new calendar. I don't have any events in it yet. I'm going to set an event for next week. I'm going to set it for next Tuesday. And what I'm going to do here, if I click on it once, it gives me this pop-up. Okay, so if you click on the date once, you get a pop-up where you can quickly add an event. You can basically do everything from here, and it's just a quite neat little summary of what that event will be. So I'm going to create a staff meeting. Oh, cannot spell today. Staff meeting. It's an event. You can also set out of offices and appointment slots, but I'm not going to cover those. If you do want to try it, create a test calendar and just see what it looks like, is my recommendation there. Right now it's set as a whole day event, so I can add a time so it's more specific. And you'll see it will suggest a time that's close to what the time is right now. And I can then add guests. So from here, if you're in Edubuzz, you can start typing in people's names and it will use the directory. Likewise, if you're in Midlothian, it will access the mc.glow.scot directory so that you can start inviting your colleagues in from there. So you could do that here. You can also add Google Meet. Now, I did say yesterday that only use this if it's with colleagues. Certainly in Midlothian, this is the way you'll probably use the Google Meet function if you are going to use it with your colleagues. It's not enabled for students there. And I said for those in East Lothian, if you are using Google Meet with students, which is not an expectation that you do, use the function within Classroom. You'll see that recording from yesterday later today when I post that. You can also add rooms or a location and then add a description. You can also choose the calendar it goes into. So if you haven't chosen to only view one calendar at a time, this drop-down menu at the bottom where it says staff meetings allows us to choose the calendar we want it to go into. So we can scroll through our list of options there. I've got it in staff meetings. If I select this more options, this is where we get the full calendar event planning kind of screen. You'll see it's a lot more detailed. This is where we can make things repeat. So if you are wanting to have a staff meeting every week on a Tuesday, you could have it that it repeats weekly on a Tuesday. You can also have things that it repeats every weekday, Monday to Friday. Say, for example, if you were organising a staff coffee break and you wanted it to be at the same time every single day, or we can have our annual events or monthly. So it is really handy to help us organise. There are schools who prefer to use this rather than use the Outlook calendars because of this kind of functionality. Just noticing a question. So once guests are added on your calendar, are they automatically emailed the link? Yes, it works in the same way. Now, I think all the emails go to their Gmail. I think in mc.glow.scot, they're set forward to your Outlook email, and within Glow, I have issues with that happening, if I'm honest. So it will automatically appear in their calendar though, and they'll just have to say yes, no, or maybe as the option. They get a maybe as well, not a tentative, it's a maybe. So I tend to respond with a maybe myself. So you can do that. You can also look at the time zones. So if you are looking to have events where they're with people in other countries, certainly if you've got Gmail as your personal calendar, that's how I operate. All my stuff's on my personal Gmail account. I use this, and then I do have meetings with people in different countries sometimes. So certainly making use of the time zone is quite handy. So I'm going to have my staff meeting repeating weekly on a Tuesday at the moment. So I'm going to choose that weekly on a Tuesday. If you're setting this up, you can add it at any point. What to do is add me as a guest initially if you want to, or what you can do is you can have it so that it is set so that if you do want to actually use this with your school, by all means go and put in your actual colleagues so it's actually more purposeful for you. It doesn't have to be me if that's not what you want to. If you don't want me to come along to your meetings, I probably won't, so don't worry. So in the guest section you can add me, so you can always add my email address, which is emckay1@edubuzz.org or mckye@mc.glow.scot. So there are the two options there. It will star if it is outside of your domain. So there are the two things there. And then because I hadn't had a location set, it adds this Google Meet as well. So it's got my Google Meet there. That means I can have these meetings online. And if I just zoom out, quite zoomed in, and if I come down to here, so now we can start to add notifications. So I am going to add a notification so that I can get a reminder. Now, the great thing with Google Calendar is we can add multiple. You could have a reminder for an hour before, 10 minutes before, perhaps a lot, just so you don't forget it. So if it is one of those really important meetings, you can set it so that there's a notification 10 minutes before, or you can even have it that there's an email a day before, for example. So having that email, certainly if you've got work to prepare for that meeting, you can have that set so that you're emailed the day before. I'm not sure how well that will work in the mc.go.scot accounts, if I'm honest. So you'll probably be best sticking with the notification option, and you could have that notification hours, days, or weeks before, depending on how much time you need. And then you can change this as well. So everything here can be changed. And is it possible to link different accounts, Google Calendars, link my personal account calendar with my work one? You can add another Google Calendar. I'll show you how to share that later. So it's like the Techie Tea Party one where you're able to add that to your own account. So I'll talk through that just shortly. So certainly once you've got all of this, when it comes to the event, if you want to add any documents, you can add an attachment to this. So if you add an attachment, you can then look at your own drive, anything that you've accessed recently, or you can upload from your computer as well. So there's all these options here that we can use for, certainly if it's something you're going to discuss with your colleagues in a meeting, you could have that all attached so that there's no need to be printing everything. It can all be accessed within the calendar event itself. So I will quickly add this in here. And now I can double check. So I've got my staff meeting starting next week on the 19th, weekly every Tuesday. Now, it may be that I don't want this to go on forever. I can customize this as well. So repeat every week on a Tuesday, and I can have it finish at a certain point. So this is where you can have it ending before the summer holidays, for example. So you don't have all these calendar events going on throughout the summer, for example. So you can change when that happens. So you can select the date that it ends, or you can have it that this is only going to be 4 times. So you could have 4 weeks and then select done. And that was in that repeating bit at the top here. Customize it, and then you can have all of these options here. You can have it repeat every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, 4 times. It's really great for being able to quickly organize events. So now I can save that. I'm not going to send invites, and I will invite an OK. So this is because I've got an attachment that hadn't been shared with my other account. And now you'll see in this calendar, I've got a staff meeting every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, but it only occurs 4 times. That's quite a nice little feature there for you. Just to show you how to share calendars, this is where my brain needs to wake up a little bit more. If I choose to share this calendar with people, I need to click on the 3 dots. I can go into settings and sharing. So this is if you do want to share this so that you can access this calendar on another account. Go to settings and sharing. And then from here, if I go to share with specific people, down the left-hand side, so if I click on any of my calendars, this will appear underneath it. If I click on my personal one here, you can see I've got that share with specific people, likewise with that staff meetings one. This just helps it skip to that part of the page. It all appears on this side. If I just scroll through, you see that share with specific people option. This is just to make that navigation a bit faster for you. So from here, I can either share with a link. So this is what I used for the Techie Tea Party website. So if I just load that up, just so you can see what that looks like. So when I embedded that calendar, I had the shareable link switched on so that anybody could add that calendar to their own Google Calendars as well. So they could take that and actually have it sync over. So I've got that made available for EduBuzz, but you can also make it public. So if you are wanting it to be available on your school website, so if you have school events, this is another great way of using the calendar. You could have this calendar linked on your school website with all of the events going on. Certainly if it's virtual events or things that are going on through the school year transition, school trips when they all happen again, that can all go on. But certainly it's useful for having a bit of a school calendar of events rather than having to list. You can update the calendar and it'll update straight away on your website. You can have it so it's available for EduBuzz, or this is where you can add people. So from here, I can then add my other account. So I could add my mc.glow.scot account. I can have different permissions. So this is similar to Outlook. If you've ever shared your calendar in Outlook, you can have it so it's only for your busy times. All event details means they see the entire thing. They see the name of the event, all of the documents that are associated with it as well, which is handy if you're doing a staff calendar or one, as I mentioned earlier, for sharing devices in the school and having that rotation of devices and a timetable going for them. You can also have it so that they can make changes to the events. So if this is perhaps you're looking at sharing your work calendar with your personal account as well, you may want to be able to quickly make changes from your personal device and your personal account to this calendar. So it's up to you. This is probably where, if you are wanting it to be make changes or manage sharing, certainly the make changes one is one where you'll want your colleagues to be able to make changes to the calendar if it is a staff meeting one for your senior leadership teams, or if it's a device calendar for in your school when you're managing the devices used. So you'll probably want them to make changes, but if it is just so that other people can see it, it's one of the top two. I'm going to make this one be able to make changes and send. So that will now mean that I can access that on my other account as well. Sharing settings have been saved. And likewise, we can get a shareable link. So you could put that link into your Google Classroom if it's an extra calendar, certainly for those of you who are secondary teachers, if you wanted to have a revision calendar for your students or something with all of the deadlines for their coursework, you could always make an extra calendar for that. That's really all for the actual calendar interface. The last thing I'll show you is just in Google Classroom, where the students will access any due dates and stuff that are coming up. So what I will do now, if I just come into my classes, I can either open up a class straight away. And so if I go into a demo, for example, and in the classwork section, this is where we have this Google Calendar option. I click on this Google Calendar, it will then open that calendar as well. I will need to switch off my staff meetings one. And obviously, oh, I do have an assignment due in here. So you can see there is an assignment due. My calendars aren't the best example of this because I obviously don't teach every single day. I've not taught in a couple of years of class. So certainly I'm not going to have as many due dates as you will have. So what I would suggest doing is open a classroom that you've got. If you do set due dates, so the only way it will appear is if you set a deadline for that assignment. Just to recap how you do that, when you create an assignment, you put that due date in, and that's what will appear in the calendar, is that due date of when that activity is due to be handed in. So just make sure you have done that and select all of select the most relevant date. I know a lot of people are setting tasks on a Monday with a due date of a Friday at the moment, given the current lockdown situation that we're all in. So the students can access those calendars. Also in Google Classroom, down the side, you as a teacher, you've got a to-do list, and as a student, they also have a to-do list. So this is sometimes quite useful for them being able to see what they have got due on at that point. So they may want to go in and see what tasks they've got due. So I can see when these were all due. This isn't in the calendar, but certainly is useful. Now you can see I'm very useless at doing any of my tasks. They're all missing. So I don't do very much of my done. I have done one activity. So there you go. But students will have what's missing, things that do not have a due date. So these are all the things that won't appear in that calendar. So if they are missing it from calendar, it will appear in this new no due date section. And you'll see I've got quite a few there. And as a teacher, your to-do activities, you can see when people have handed work in. So I can see that in this classroom, I've got 5 handed in, 296 people haven't done the work. I mean, that's just not good enough. So if you can go through, see what work you have done, if you've handed in, if you've marked them, and so on. So that's another useful place for you to go as a teacher. And finally, going back into those 3 lines to get our options, we have that calendar option underneath our classes. So again, this is where we can go in and we can see a calendar within Google Classroom. You can see all classes, or you can choose specific classes as well. Whether you're a student or a teacher, you'll have this option. And as a teacher, I know you're a student in the Techie Tea Party classrooms, you can go and see what is due. I don't set due dates anyway, but certainly you'll be able to view what is due there. Just a recap, for accessing your Google Calendar, you go to the 9 tiles, that lovely waffle menu in the top right-hand corner, whether you're in the home page of Google Classroom or of any of the other tools, or from google.com, those 9 tiles, and then you have calendar. We can move these around to make it faster for us to access them. So if you do end up using calendar regularly, you might want to move it further up so you don't have to search for it in the menu bar. This will then launch it. To add a new calendar, we scroll down to near enough the bottom where it says other calendars. We select the add, create a new calendar. You can give your calendar a name and then create. It will take a few seconds to do. We see that calendar progress at the bottom. It will let us know there when it has been created, hopefully shortly. Here we go. There it's done. So I can then come back out of this, find that name calendar. I will display this only as it makes it much easier to add the events to that calendar. You can change the color. So if you do have your color coding going on in your Google Drive and you want it to match, go ahead and change the colors. And then you can, from here, if you click on a date, you will get the small menu for creating an event. You can do most things from here, but as we go into the more options, or if we double click, that's where we get these more options as well. This is where we get these options for the repeating. So that's where you can choose when events repeat. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat. I'm going to stop recording now so that I can cover all of your questions, regardless of whether they're about calendar.